let's talk about slowing down. So I'm going to guess if you're checking out videos on my channel, maybe you are already on some kind of a path of personal growth where you understand that the world is just spinning too fast and we need to stop and slow down from time to time. This is really the most basic point of any kind of mindfulness practice. And if you've just got that and that's it, great, because you're already ahead of a lot of people. But what does it mean to really slow down? And in addition to anything you might do like meditation or yoga, you might practice like me, the Feldenkrais method, how can you use this idea of slowing down in daily life? In other words, not at that time that you maybe set aside for practice, but in the midst of something else that you're doing. And how can you learn to use it with increasing skill? My name is Seth Dellinger. I am a Feldenkrais practitioner in Washington, D.C. And if you find this video helpful and you'd like to dive a little deeper with my guidance, I'd love to help you with that. There's a link below this video for how you can get in touch with me. So again, just to simply stop every so often. Some people call this the essential pause. This is such a valuable tool. Why? Because when I stop, I can come back to my breath, my connection to the ground below me, right? Feeling my body, seeing my surroundings, just grounding in, right? If you do nothing but that, and you do that several times a day to the point where it becomes a habit, this can have a profound effect on your overall experience of life. It can be a really great thing to do to create a little more space in your day, a little more sense of breathing room, a little more room to think, right? But if you've got that, how can you take it deeper? Because you might be just saying, well, okay, stop. Yeah, okay, that's kind of simple, kind of obvious, and you might even do it once or twice, but then you kind of think nothing radical happened there, and then you kind of forget, and you don't see where it's going. So today I'd like to introduce another idea of how we can work with the essential pause. And that's to understand that in anything we do internally, we always have some sort of map that we're working off of. So right now I am making this video, I'm standing in front of my camera and I'm talking to you, but it's like I kind of have this image in my head of myself as I do this. I have some kind of concept that's there, or we could say an image, and when I slow down, I can maybe notice that image that I'm working from. The reason this is helpful is because that image might be a good fit to the situation, or it might not be, right? I might be working off of the wrong map. So what I'd like to do with you now is give you an example of how this works in a very concrete way, and I'm going to use a little example involving movement. But then we're going to zoom out and see how it applies to situations that might not seem to be directly dependent on how do I move my body. But for now, let's just say we're doing a simple movement. We're going to put our hand up on top of our head, right? Pretty simple. So just try this, and you can do it with one hand and then do it with the other. And just do it a couple times, but maybe you could notice, even if this is simple for you, that one of your arms, it actually feels lighter. It feels easier to do this. Or just the overall experience of putting my hand on top of my head. In my case right now, I'm noticing it feels more comfortable with my right hand than with my left hand. Okay, but why? Who knows? Well, if I pay a little more attention, and so I'm going to invite you once again to put one hand on top of your head and then the other. But notice a couple of specific things, and maybe you can see as I do this, I shift my weight a little to the right when I put my right hand on my head, and I can actually feel down to my right foot. That's where most of my weight is right now. When I bring my left hand up, I shift a little, but actually my weight is still over on the right, and I've kind of got this strain in my low back on the left side. So I haven't really organized my body underneath the arm as efficiently as I did on the right side. Here's another thing. So when I bring up my hand, what happens to my spine? Okay, well, on the side where it feels good to me, if I pay attention, I just think of from the top of my head down to my tail, I kind of lift up a little. It's almost as if my head is reaching up to my hand. When I do it on this side, yeah, I mentioned before the pain, little slight pain sensation I had here, and I'm actually kind of collapsing. So I'm getting a little shorter. If you pay attention to your breastbone, when you bring your arm up, what does the breastbone do? Here I can feel my breastbone is lifting a little bit. I'm going to go to the side that wasn't so comfortable. Yeah, it actually kind of sank a little bit. And if you look at a skeleton, you'll see your breastbone connects to your collarbones, to your shoulders, and to your arms. So this is really where, in terms of just how your skeleton is organized, this is where your arms connect to the center of your body. And if that center is doing something, and I'm exaggerating now, but it's going opposite, right, that's making what you're doing more difficult. Okay, so you might have noticed in yourself, if you went to one side and then to the other, some of these qualities, right? The point is, before I investigated, this wasn't part of the image of what I was doing. I just thought, hand on top of head, right? And I just did something. It worked out pretty well on this side, but on this side, not so much. And so now that I've paid attention, I can think, it felt better when I had my weight underneath me where I was lifting the arm. It felt better when I sort of had a sense of lengthening through the spine. My breastbone was lifting with the arm. So now as I go to the side that wasn't so comfortable, well, it's not instantly better, but if I pay attention to those things, if I really bring my weight over my left leg, I think of my breastbone being connected to my arm and rising up, that's actually a lot more comfortable. Okay, so if you happen to be working with movement, this is a thing you can do, right? You slow down and you observe yourself in this way. Last thing to do with this, to make the point, is let's just suppose that I'm thinking of doing this, but before I do it, I pause. And I'm curious about that image of the movement. So if I think of putting my right hand up on my head without doing it, I sort of sense something. What's going on inside of me? And then I think of doing it with the left hand. And the funny thing is that little place in my back, I actually feel it just imagining putting my left hand up on top of my head. So once again, in the image, can I imagine my spine lengthening? Can I imagine the weight shifting? Can I imagine my breastbone lifting? And even though I'm not doing the action, I notice a difference in the quality. So whatever we're doing it based on the image. And what is the quality of the image? How detailed is it? And those important factors, like the example I gave here, the length of my spine, where I'm placing my weight, my capacity to breathe, right? So if I go here, I breathe one way, but if I go here in a kind of a sloppy way, my breath isn't as available to me. I can't actually fill my lungs as well. We can start to notice those things. Now, as I said, what about a situation where the primary question isn't how do I execute this physical movement? Well, before we get too far away from the body, let's just notice that if I'm kind of slumped and sinking and my posture is just like making it an effort to be in my body, what's it like to think from here? What's it like to, imagine doing something difficult versus if I am in a better place where I can breathe, where I feel my length, right? So before you assume that your question doesn't relate to the body, not so fast. It's actually always good to check in with the state of your body as you begin to chew on, how am I going to solve this problem? Okay, but let's assume that, you have some grasp on that, and what you're really trying to figure out is, wow, I don't know what I'm going to say to this person. This is a really difficult situation, or, I really can't decide, between these two different things that I'm considering buying. I'm about to spend a lot of money, but I don't want to make the wrong choice. In those situations, how can you orient differently? Well, so in the example with the hand going up on the head, what I did was I said, well, let me pay attention to some other factors. In other words, what I changed was my focus. So if this is a decision you're making or some kind of a relationship question, we could still think of 3 basic ways of focusing your attention that might be helpful or not so helpful, depending on the situation. So let's just call them zooming in, zooming out, or seeing things as they are. So zooming in, you might imagine taking out a microscope, right, to really zoom in on some details. That's kind of what was going on a minute ago when I was zooming in on different parts of my body as I was moving my arm. But what are the different details of this situation? Maybe there's a question of precision. I really need to get the subtleties right. And if I can do that, this is going to work out well. So when I pause, I might notice, yeah, okay, that's what's needed here. Or I might notice that that's what I'm doing, but maybe it's a situation where I need to have a broader focus, and instead I'm just looking at the details, right? I'm kind of like a little tunnel vision. So it's not good or bad, but it depends on the situation. Now, another way to think about narrowing your focus is not just what you're zooming in on, but what you are not focusing on, right? Sometimes there's just a lot of noise and distraction, and what we need to do is to be able to sort of just look at one thing, right? There's a lot of, say I'm in a restaurant and I want to talk to my friend and I don't want to hear all those other conversations. Well, I need to be able to narrow my focus. And the way that this becomes easier is if I can do it with a sense of calm, right? So it's not too tight, but that's why, for example, in meditation, just the practice of following your breath and then maybe getting distracted but coming back. You're learning a kind of concentration, but you're also learning a kind of a calm, okay? So obviously, zooming out is a different kind of focus, and that's sometimes what we need because we really need to understand how things connect. Or it could be that we're facing a difficulty and we need a little perspective, right? Maybe I don't enjoy the situation I'm in, but if my focus is entirely on, this sucks, right? Well, it's going to make it harder, right? But if I can see, in the course of this day, this week, this month, accomplishing this task is actually going to create more possibilities for me, well, that zoomed out focus is going to be much more appropriate. So again, when I pause, come to my breath, my body, and then I come to my focus, am I zoomed out? Or would it be helpful if I was zoomed out? Okay, or just seeing things as they are. So we can refer again to the example I was doing with the hands too. The fact is, when I bring one arm up versus the other, one really is better than the other. I might like to think that, this is simple and I can see it, I can do it, and I just don't differentiate. I don't pay enough attention and really see how things are. But when I did notice there's a difference side to side, then I can begin to study it. And I'm actually working from reality as opposed to some kind of fantasy I have about I perform in a certain way and I kind of just blur over those little differences. Again, this is a question of being with the way things really are. Because of course, if I'm telling myself a tale, or for example, I want a certain outcome from this situation, but maybe it's an interaction, maybe you and I are talking together and you're wanting a different outcome. Well, the more that I want my outcome and you want your outcome, the more we're going to have a problem, right? We're going to have a conflict. But if we could actually communicate to the point where we both see that we want two different things, but now we're talking about the difference, then we can maybe begin to work something out, right? We can actually see that the reality is there isn't agreement, but we can work together with the shared reality of the disagreement. So, is my focus adequate to the situation? And this might be pretty simple sometimes, except for the fact that we don't stop, pause, and ask the question. Okay, so the hardest situation maybe to do this in is a situation that seems to be in motion already. Like what I was just mentioning, you're in a dialogue with someone. They say something, now you're going to say something, right? It keeps going, and maybe there's a certain sense of momentum. But here's the thing, if you speak and then it's my turn to speak, I can wait 1 second, I can wait 2 or 3 seconds before I speak, right? I can pause long enough to sense my breath. And you're probably familiar with something that we all do, is we think of things to say and we don't say them because we think, well, that wouldn't be the best. Or maybe someone says something that you find funny, but you kind of realize, I might be the only one who found that funny, and you inhibit, right? Now, on the other hand, sometimes we over-inhibit, right? We're thinking something, we want to express it, and we're too afraid. It's like, oh, I can't, and then we don't speak at all, and we just keep way too quiet, right? So we don't want either one of these extremes. But let's just say that there's something that's real for you, and it might be a little dicey to express it, but you also get this sense of, if I keep quiet, that too isn't going to be so great. So then what if you just slow down, and then even as you speak, you say something, and then as you speak, you're really listening to how it's coming out, word by word, right? You're pausing as you go. And it just means that you have a little more capacity to notice the look on the other person's face, to kind of just get maybe an energetic feel of how this is going, and to make adjustments as you go. Maybe you're a little too zoomed in, maybe you're a little too zoomed out. So once again, the essential pause is essential to any mindfulness practice, and it's the essential bridge between that thing you do when you set aside time for your self-care versus what you do in the flow of daily life. Just pausing. And if that's where you're at, that's all you're doing, great. But then the next question just might be, how am I focusing? What am I focused on? And how am I focusing? And is my focus appropriate? And just last thing, if we go back to that conversation question, maybe I really don't know what to do, but maybe if I just pause and wait, someone else speaks and something else opens up, right? The waiting can actually, at times, be the best thing to do nothing and just to pause. And there's other things going on, there's other people in the situation, there's other dynamics. Maybe something changes in the overall situation while you're waiting, and then a new possibility arises. So I hope this was helpful to you, this basic idea of the essential pause. And if you'd like my help to see how this idea and other similar techniques in terms of everyday mindfulness can help you, you can book a call with me at the link below this video. I'll be making more videos soon, so if you enjoyed this, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, or leave a comment below. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.